Hi, I'm Krista Johnson. This is Theodore. It's day 4 with us being together here in Orland, Indiana. My goal for this session, we're going to kind of work on the beginning of a forequarter yield, hindquarter yield, and maybe backing up with some rhythm in the rope. And just see if we can improve on those things a little bit in this session. I'm just putting a 2-beat up and down rhythm in the rope. I want him to think back up. That's so much better from yesterday. I didn't have to use my stick at all. He's not trotting backwards by any means, but if I expected that much in training session number 2 with this, I would have unrealistic expectations. He's putting the effort in. He's understanding what that means. I'd like him to put a little bit more effort in and maybe be a little bit more punctual, so that's where I'll come in with the stick and say, hey, put a little bit more effort in there. Now that I know you're starting to understand what that means, still working on drawing out these 5 boundaries. They're still new to him. Oh, there is a fly there. That might be why he's swishing his tail. But I want him to think of picking up that front left and stepping it over. So I want to balance him to where that front left foot is going to be easier to pick up. I'm going to point my toes, belly button, rein hand, to where I want his front feet to go, which is over here. I don't want to point my hand all the way out here. If I do that, I'm actually telling him to come into my space. The rope's actually telling him to come right over my feet. I don't want that. I want to start building a turn on the haunches to where he can learn to turn his nose, pick up his shoulders, and swing his front end over. There. That was a really nice step over with that left front when he finally got it. And he does need to shift his weight backwards for that turn, but I don't want him to think suck back. So I just want to get some motivated walking here. For any yield to work very well, you have to have that forward going. So I already know he can kind of do, the preschool level of a hindquarter yield, disengage to a stop. He's not really particular about what he does with stepping under with his back feet. I'll slide this rein towards the stirrup. I'm going to try to encourage him to go forward. Go forward. See how he's sucking back? I actually want those front feet to continue to moving slightly forward in a smaller circle with the back end going in a larger circle. There. That's where I'm going to release. I do not want him pivoting and grinding those front feet into the ground, bracing up his leg and his shoulders. Until they're athletic enough to do a pivot without doing that, I actually want him to pick those front feet up and continue to moving slightly forward in a small circle while the back end steps over and under on a bigger circle. And there needs to be just a little bit of forward motion to get that going. And that's where he was just thinking, I know hindquarter yield, disengage to a stop, and then I kind of suck back. We'll keep building on that as we go. I'm going to go back to the back up. He's not thinking about what I'm asking at all there. I'll tap up in the center of the chest. I'm thinking like up right in the center of his legs. He's a little bit curious about my stick there, so I might let him sniff that. Apparently there's some kind of interesting odor on it that he's sniffing out there, so I'm just going to let him. I'd rather have him be curious about things than be scared. We'll draw out our boundaries. He's got the boundary on the left, boundary on the right, 4 foot or more boundary between my belly button and his chest. There's one behind his tail. If he was hitting the boundary behind his tail, there wouldn't be slack in the rope. He'd be pulling back, sucking back, which he's not. And then there's one above his pole, which he's got plenty of clearance there. I'm going to ask him to back up again, put that 2-beat rhythm in the rope. I don't want to get to where I'm like really shaking the rope sideways. That has a tendency to make them want to throw their head up and tighten their back. I don't want that. I just like that 2-beat rhythm because in a proper backup, there's 2 beats. And it's technically the same as a trot diagonal, but backwards. Ideally, if they're doing a backup really well and yielding really well in it. We're not there yet, but we're going to work towards that. And that rhythm in the rein is going to mean something also when we ride. I might even put 3 beats in the rein for a canter. It's something real light that you can do with your fingers. It can be almost invisible to most other people once you get really good with it. So here I'm just going to stick with it until he moves that front left over and then moves that front right over in front of and goes forward. I want him to understand and not crowd my space though. Eventually we'll get to the drift yield. That's one of the yields I'm going to teach him, but it's not what I'm trying to focus here today. I'm just trying to defend my space. I've got my circle here. He's got his out there. I'm going to own my space and just say, don't be there with my stick. If he's out of the way, he shouldn't be feeling any pressure at all. Again, I'm going to slide my hand down the rope slowly, slow my feet down where my balance is pointed more kind of behind where the stirrup would be or towards his flank. There I'm tapping him, encouraging him to go forward. Because the feel on the rope that's very nice. I'm going to stop there. That might not have been the best camera angle, but that was a huge improvement. And since I'm kind of reading him as being the underachiever type of personality, I want to make sure that when he puts effort into something that I find a way to reward him for that. And reward him in a way that it's going to be meaningful to him specifically. A lot of times the best reward you can give an underachiever is to give him a little break to stand still, let him have some oxygen. Eventually, if we're working on the trot or the canter on the circle, I might let him come down to the walk and let that be his relief or the easier thing to do. Sometimes food can be a good motivator, but because he's on a special diet, I'm going to try not to use that. Sometimes I will use that for horses if respect has already been established. But I feel like we're still kind of working on the respect a little bit. We've got plenty of rapport. He's great at that. He's super friendly, and he does try. He's pretty willing. But sometimes when I ask him to move his feet, either the understanding's not really there, or the respect's not really there, but we haven't replicated this enough for him to know these things. So I'm looking for those little bits of progress that he's making and those little bits of effort that he's making. The worst thing I could do, be like, yeah, that's better. Let's do it 30 more times. That'll make him stop trying. More anxious sort of horse, sometimes they might need those 30 repetitions before their emotions come down, but he doesn't seem to be a super emotional kind of guy. He's pretty chill. He's pretty confident so far from what he's telling me most of the time. He lets me know he's a little unsure of things from time to time, but I haven't seen him lose his mind about anything at all. He's pretty centered. But sometimes when I ask his feet to move, he's maybe either not understanding or maybe not respecting my direction. But the more different ways I can get him to start understanding my direction and being cooperative with going along with my ideas, the better everything will get. Everybody wants to ride their horse, and I get it. I love riding as well. But if you're honest with yourself, most of the time that you spend with your horse is actually going to be unmounted. There's a lot of importance in putting time into building a language and communication with your horse on the ground first. If he's not willing to go along with my ideas, or he doesn't understand my ideas to where he can even figure out what I'm asking, my ride's probably not going to go very good. So it looked like he was mentally processing for a bit, so I was just talking about some psychology type things, but now he's kind of telling me he's ready for the next thing. I might just come back over here to where we can be a little bit more in the camera. Ideally, I kind of want to work in the same space and be to where our yields are that good that we can stay here, but we're still very much in the teaching phase on a lot of these things. So I'm going to be willing to flex my pattern a little bit. Look at that. Got a tail swish along with it, but there's a lot more understanding and a lot more effort put in there. I'm going to ask for more backup, but I wanted to give him relief and let him know how much I appreciated that effort put in there. If he's going to swish his tail, I might get a little more effective and say, hey, you could have a better attitude about that and be a little bit more respectful. I ask for him to step over. That was a really nice turn. And that's a good example of how being effective with one that maybe's not being the most respectful partner can really help things. Just putting that little extra effectiveness in that backup really gave him a little bit more yes ma'am towards me to yield those shoulders over. I don't know what that little hop was about. I didn't ask him to do anything but walk, but I'm gonna wait till we can kind of come around here. I'm gonna switch my hands on the rope. He automatically thinks that means stop and kind of suck back. So I'll try to balance myself in the right spot to help him. Better. Better. I like how he stopped there. I'm not worried about the rope wrapping around his legs. People focus too much on worrying about those kinds of things. I want to know how he's going to react to that. If he has an issue with that, I want to know about it so I can help him. But anyways, I'm really happy with how he rolled around there on the hind, and I'm really happy with how he kept that inside front foot light. So that's already a huge improvement. So I might quit working on that side. That turn on the haunches when I sent him out was really nice. And that hindquarter yield's getting better. That's really nice. So now I might work on the other side. And I'm not going to assume that just because he's starting to understand there on the right side that it might apply exactly to the left. Sometimes it does. Some horses will act like they don't know what you're talking about when you switch from one side to the other. And that's why we practice both. I'd like him to be a little bit more squared up, but I'm not going to be that particular. It's just day 4. He doesn't really need to yield that much further out, so I'll just work on asking him to go forward there. Ask him to go forward there. I'm going to wait to walk until he puts me in the saddle. I'm going to make sure he's out of my space. He has a tendency to fall in more on this left side, I've noticed. So I'll just put a little bit more energy into swinging this. It doesn't mean go faster. It doesn't mean worry about it. It just means don't be there. This means this is my circle. It's my bubble. Stay out of it. You've got your circle out there. You've got your personal bubble around you. So that's a nice forward walk there that he's given me. I'm going to switch my hands. Slide my hand down on the rope to shorten it. It's going to change my balance. That's already better. I'm going to let him stop there. Or pet him. See, as I changed my feet and my belly button and that space kind of behind where the stirrup would be and his flank, he started rolling under in the hind and he kept that forward. I didn't have to tell him with the stick to continue going forward. And yesterday he didn't understand that at all, so he's making huge progress. And he's telling me that he learns really fast and he's a really smart cookie. It may not be the most exciting video to watch, but these things are really, really important. What we're preparing him for is for that indirect rein to talk to the hind feet in different ways when I go to ride him. If he ever gets emotional or worried or tries to take off, I'm not saying he ever will, but he is a horse and they do horse-like things. So the better we can prepare him for when those things happen, that we have an established communication that we've practiced a lot. We start in the low energy situations and then we can practice that form of communication, those rein positions, when things get a little bit more emotional or a little bit more chaotic, to make sure that they work in a higher energy situation. I'm pointing my rein hand kind of behind where the stirrup would be. That's going to be similar for when I'm riding, and I slide my hand down and around towards my knee to get him to bend a little bit laterally and to step that outside hind out and the inside hind under. Sometimes I'll want him to disengage to a stop. Sometimes I'll want him to continue to go forward and roll his hind over until I ask him to do something else. I can use that for downward transitions. I can use that for upward transitions even. I can use it anytime that he gets tight, tense, or bracy to help him bend more laterally and start to bend his ribs. But the more I can talk to the hind feet and have an intricate conversation with the hind feet, the more mentally connected he'll be and the more emotionally collected he'll be. But she's telling me he doesn't seem to have a whole lot of issues with that so far. He's pretty confident in himself. I just am looking for him to understand my idea first, because this is new stuff for him, and then to put some effort in. Again, I'll reposition us back over here. I like that he's pretty good with leading so far. Someone did a good job with that. Look at that. Still got kind of a tail swish there, but he put a lot more effort into that. There he's letting go a lot of tension in his muzzle. You kind of see for the last, 5 minutes or so, he had some tension in his muzzle. Sometimes it can be emotional, sometimes it can be mental resistance. I'm not sure yet. We're still getting to know each other. Put that 2-beat rhythm in the rope. Much better. So we're getting the understanding there. I just want to keep building on it. Thank you for moving your foot, but that's not quite how I wanted you to move it. I might even ask him to square up a little bit more here. And use that direct rein to direct his front end over. He should be ready to pick up. I want him to be ready to pick up that front left. There, I'm going to touch him because I've been putting that rhythm in the rope, and he's been doing the opposite, kind of creeping into my space. I'm going to say, yeah, let's not do that. Not close that door. Or wait, I need to send him the other way. Ready to pick up that front right, step it over, there it goes. I like how he's putting more effort into going forward out of that turn too. So I might just stay quiet for a little bit and say, thanks for putting that effort in. You're staying out of my space a little bit better too, until I looked at him, then I kind of threw him off. So I'll just think about walking on my circle, being quiet, just going with him. He's getting a little bit behind there. I'll drive the hock forward a little bit more. Make sure he doesn't think about crowding my space here. But I really need that forward to get that hindquarter roll working. There he thought stop, and I'm like, yeah, that conveyor belt back there is going to bump into your butt when you do that, because I didn't ask you to stop. I'm teaching him to assume the responsibility to keep me in the saddle. That's going to give me an angle on this rope similar to what my rein angle might be if I was actually sitting on his back. It's going to be important for teaching him that rein to brain to foot connection. Slide my hand down, slow my feet down, start walking my circle this way. And I like that he's thinking step under. There we go. But he was kind of stiff and jammed up on his front end, so I waited till he started moving that front end slightly forward. And then I'll release. And I like that he licked and chewed there. Again, I don't care that he's stepping on the rope. he decides to worry about that, it'll just be another training opportunity to help him if he were to ever get his foot caught in a fence. I'd like to think that I've done enough to prepare him to not panic about that. That backup's getting better. There's a little bit more yes ma'am in it there. There he's thinking, licking and chewing again. Looks like he's processing quite a bit, so I'll stand there and let him think about it. But his understanding of the things that I'm asking is getting so much better. So once he understands, then I can kind of work on getting him to be a little bit more respectful and putting more effort in instead of just giving me a tail swish or putting his ears back a little bit. And he's mentally processing pretty hard there. But I really like the amount of effort that he's starting to put in to a lot of these different things. A lot of times these underachiever personality types can kind of trick you into thinking that they're lazy and stubborn. A lot of times it can appear that way. But what they really are, they're masters at preserving their own energy. Because they'll use their energy when it's their idea, they absolutely will. But these more confident underachiever types will look like they're unmotivated a lot of times, and that just comes from being a little bit more of a dominant type personality. The more dominant horse in the herd moves their feet the least. The subordinates will usually move their feet and be driven around by the more dominant horses. And for the other horses that try to challenge that dominant horse, try to get them to move or try to bite them and kick them and trying to influence and drive them away, they're likely to just stand there and wear that pressure, saying that, hey, I'm dominant here. I don't care if you're trying to take over in the hierarchy. I'm the top dog out here. Your bites, your kicks, your tail swishing, your ears back don't threaten me at all. And they'll just wear that pressure, and they'll do the same thing with us. Like, I love that he's confident, and I love that he settles into new places really well. Those are wonderful qualities to have. But I'm not going to let him trick me into thinking that he's not sensitive. He can feel those flies land on him, maybe even before they land on him. He can feel everything, but I'll call his bluff when he tries to tell me that he's dull or sensitive or things don't mean something. Have to think horse psychology, not human psychology with these things. That's why anytime I see him put more effort in, I'm going to find a way to reward him in a way that's going to mean something to him. The more I can do that, the more likely he's going to want to do things for me. He's going to want to follow my idea. But if I'm just nagging at him the whole time and trying to micromanage him the whole time, he'll pretty soon get me to where I'm working a lot harder than him. They're kind of this kind of personality type, they're kind of masters at doing that. But I'm going to let him know that, I know I'm not a horse, but I know a little bit about horse psychology, and I'm going to call his bluff about being dull and not understanding things, and I'm not going to write him off as, oh, you're lazy or you're stubborn, and put some kind of human label on it. And just, yeah, I know your personality type. I know some things that might change your mind about how we communicate together and your willingness to do it. Part of that is just giving him that good deal. That's going to be that feel on the rope, my body position, and following up with closing whatever boundary I need to close to get him to follow that rope. If I start to give him too many phases in between, he'll just learn to wear it more and more. And he'll learn to tune out that good deal. I always want to give him a good deal. I wouldn't be fair if I wasn't. I'm always going to give him that good deal, and I'm going to tell him, hey, this boundary is closing. Don't be there. And I'm going to try to be consistent and persistent about where all those closed doors are going to be if he doesn't follow the open door feel I put on the rope. That's interesting. My assistant, Michaela, said yesterday when we were videotaping that she noticed when he was kind of done mentally processing that he'd kind of come up and want to connect with me. I think she might be right on that, but he's still thinking there. But I really like that he's not sucking back from me a whole lot from this position and trying to just act disinterested in what we're doing. These underachievers are really, really smart usually. They're just masters at preserving their own energy, and they're just really big thinkers. So the more I can get to his brain, the more he's going to appreciate doing things with me and for me and together as a team. But if I get to where we start progressing on something and he's putting a little bit of effort in, the worst thing I can do is like, let's do 100 more repetitions of that today. You know, even if it's just something like a small 20-minute short training session, if I can put him up, let him be a horse for a couple hours, and if I have time later to get him out and build on it, that'd be absolutely okay. But if I try to do too many repetitions of something new with him in one training session, he'll be more likely to put less and less effort in. So interesting when they're processing. They do different things with their eyes, their ears, their muzzle. It might look like I'm just boring them to death, but I know the difference between when they're napping and when they're bored. And I don't know them very well yet, and that little head toss is kind of a sure sign that, he was thinking and kind of in that state, and something caused him to pop out of it there for a brief second. Maybe it's that fly on his neck there, but be happy to help him get that fly off his neck, but I really try not to touch him or ask anything of them while they're in this state if I can help it, because I don't want to interrupt that good thought process. It might seem like we're just standing around not doing anything. My training sessions might look like the most boring things in the world, but I could probably do way too much, get his feet moving too much, and just not have him put any kind of connection to what we're actually doing, to what the purpose is, and just go through the motions and get busy, and then have him not mentally retain anything that we did. This is going to fast track our process with learning these new things, letting him to think about it, letting him realize that yes, that's the right answer, have him be pretty sure that that might be the right answer. So next time I ask, or next training session, it should just improve little by little. And as much as I need to get him moving out more for his own physical fitness, it needs to be a willing process. The worst thing I could do is in this first week get him out and try to make him do 100 laps because he could use the extra exercise to get more fit. But I bet he'd be pretty resentful if I tried to do that, and I bet he would try to get me to work harder to motivate him if I did that. I'll try to spend the time here to get to the brain first, get some willingness first, and then we'll build up to that. His ears kind of went back more slightly there for a second, and he kind of winced his whole face. He's thinking pretty hard. He's going to be so much fun. I know it might not look like it, but I'm super excited about working with him. He's a smart cookie. For the most part, he's pretty willing. Really tries to understand what I'm asking. He's super friendly, super curious. And yesterday, he started whinnying at me when I come out of the house. It's the coolest thing. I love a horse that wants to connect with people. So someone's did a phenomenal job before I got him with teaching him that he can connect with people and that it's a good thing. which the rescue said that he was initially feral, which you wouldn't know it now. He's super friendly. It's one of the reasons why I picked him, because he would just come up to the front of his stall and hang out with me and interact with me. A lot of the other horses that I had to pick from, you know, I kind of stood back and I would go to walk in their stall and they kind of cowered back, snorted, and tried to hide as far away from me as they could get. Not that I can't train those kind of horses or I don't know what to do with them. If I have a choice, I'd prefer to pick one that likes to be around people. Passing gas, shifting his weight, cocking his hind leg. All signs that he's relaxing more and more. She's a pretty confident guy, but I'm, figuring out that sometimes he does hold on to a little bit of tension. He can be a little bit stoic about it. She definitely seems to be, even though he's friendly, he seems to have a little bit more of a tendency to be an introverted personality. Definitely has a little bit more of the whoa than go. But I feel like the extroverts probably make a little bit more for interesting training videos, but if you happen to have an introverted horse and you're not sure what to do with it or sure how to read their behaviors, this might be interesting to you as well. If you watch, occasionally his ears kind of go back and then pretty quickly move. So he's still, paying a little bit of attention to his environment. He's not completely checked out, but he's still processing quite a bit. You kind of see him get that sleepy eye in his look back and forth, sometimes in both eyes at the same time, sometimes one eye at a time. And then his nostrils, like one side will be higher than the other. Those are all signs, put together. Leads me to believe that he's mentally processing quite a bit. Depending on how long he stands here and processes, this might be the end of this training session for today. We'll see. I know yesterday he kind of went through a process like this too, and I was working on trying to get him to go forward more and to yield forward more, and then I went to go ask him again, and I think he was still kind of processing a little bit, so maybe my timing on that was a little off. But he did improve on every single thing I asked him to do today. So it's not a bad thing that after he's done with this process, to call it good there. Keep things kind of short and sweet in the beginning. It helps with their willingness a lot too, but if you were anyway emotionally bothered by anything that we were doing, I would work through that until he brings his own emotions back down. With him, it seems to be more of a mental thing of just kind of opposing my idea sometimes. It's horses that are kind of used to being at the top of the pecking order, they a lot of times don't like it when someone else steps in to be the leader, and I'm not saying that's what's going on for certain here, but for the most part he's pretty willing. It's just when I ask him to go forward more, he could be a little bit more willing about that. Eventually I want to be trotting him over some trap poles for a while, helping him with his physical fitness. I really want to get him driving underneath himself with his hindquarters more and getting him to do a lot of those forward hindquarter rolls. It's going to help him a lot with his physical fitness. But I bet if I just tried to send him over some trap poles that, it might not go very well, so I can just work on the bits and pieces that need some improvement here. And then when those get better, then we can try out those trap poles and see how that goes. It's like I wouldn't expect myself, if I hadn't been exercising too much and spend more time on the couch, I wouldn't expect myself in the first week to go out and run a 5K race. I mean, I could probably try, but I wouldn't be very good at it and probably be very sore. And just work on all the individual pieces and start building up his strength. And hopefully we'll see some of his extra roundness in his belly decrease a little bit. And start to see some more muscles forming in his rear end. Well, I'm just going to continue to stand with him here. I'm not sure how long it'll take, but I'm going to call, for the most part, this the end of the training session. Since I have time today, I'm just going to stand here and hang out with him while he finishes mentally processing, then I'll put him up. But thank you for joining us.